Hello, my name is Sam Lynch. Came in the Army in 1994 as an infantryman. I did active duty for a little while, and in 1997 I became a conscientious objector. But I opted to stay in the military and transfer into medical services. Uh, After getting out of active duty, I went to the North Carolina National Guard, and I deployed with the North Carolina National Guard to Iraq from February 2004 until December 2004. Uh, we were we were occupying the area of eastern Diyala province, which is on the Iran-Iraq border east of Baghdad. I was out of Camp Caldwell, which was about 5 to 10 miles east of a small town of Balad Ruz. While I was there, I had various duties to range from being a field medic on convoys and whatnot to being a more clinical medic. The rest of the IVAW friends here, they've really covered a lot of areas very well. So I think what I want to focus on during my time of talking is the medical response to the Iraqi people. In May of 2004, when we first got to our base in late February, early March, we were occupying an area that really didn't have a lot of U.S. military forces at the time. It was a Iraqi training base, and we had an operation out of there as well. So there was no established detention facility and no SOP, and really nothing to establish a practice of care. Late April, early May, I became the supervisor for the detainee medical program. I was a specialist, rather low rank. It just turned out that I knew 2 or 3 phrases in Arabic, and no one else really wanted to do it. So I developed a SOP to provide a daily sick call for the detainees, where medical personnel would go down every day at a certain time and do a face-to-face with each detainee and see how they were doing and treat any medical conditions that they may have. My original operations plan called for a medical professional to go down, either a PA or a doctor, to go down as well. First day when this plan went into effect, the doctors refused to go. Throughout the next 8 months, there were, out of probably approximate 15 doctors in our clinic, there were 3 doctors that would go to see the detainees. So it became a situation where the medics did most of the medical care. And most of the things that were seen were headaches and backaches and things that could be treated rather easily with Tylenol or Motrin. But there were urinary tract infections, there were hernias, there were things that really did require a doctor's care. And when I confronted doctors with it, in at least 4 cases, 4 different doctors responded that we're not going to see them because they're not American. Our detainee facility was a 72-hour tops detainee facility where they would bring the locals in who were being detained and decide whether or not they had enough evidence to push them forward to a larger detainee facility such as Abu Ghraib, or I think there was one in Tikrit as well. So we only had them for a very brief period of time. Some specific instances, early on, there was a individual who had blood clots in his lower legs, and it was a fear that a blood clot would loosen itself and become lodged and cause a stroke. So we had him on Lovenox shots twice a day to cut out the blood clots. And I had to, at this time, it was right when this operation was starting, so I was still going through and getting doctor's signatures on prescriptions, and I had to do it day by day. So depending on who the doctor on duty was, depended on whether or not this person would get his medication or not. Towards the end of the rotation, it got to the point where the medical personnel were writing the prescription. Not the doctors, but the medics themselves were prescribing medicine for the detainees because nobody else would do it. Going into the detainee center, when we did a initial assessment of all the detainees, there was a tendency for the MPs who ran the detainee center to want to identify the detainees by what they were being arrested for. And so instead of it being an individual, they lost their name, they became a number, and it became 30-0024, for example, try to bomb U.S. soldiers, or is targeting translators. Really, they lost their identity in that process, and it was really hard to maintain a unbiased attitude towards caring for them when the first thing you hear about them is what they're there for. But as it turns out, there was a high percentage of the people who were detained that were just released because there was not enough evidence on. And I don't have an exact number, but during the time that I was supervisor, we saw approximately 225 detainees, and I would say that at least 60 or 70% never had enough evidence on. This medical neglect actually started to transcribe out into the other elements of Iraqi people, the Iraqi workers on the post. They would be doing construction work and have an injury, and they would be refused treatment. The translators, there was a translator who I worked with quite often who developed a hip problem and tried to get him an x-ray, and the doctors refused treatment on him. There was just a lot of neglect, and it's a situation that I felt at the time that I should have said something, and I didn't. And being in charge, I feel a lot of guilt because I didn't say anything at the time, and I really feel that I did an injustice to these people by not demanding that the doctors actually see them, and instead trying to do the doctor's job, me and the other medics on our own. And I believe that's all I have.